And God said, "Let there be
The
light."
Lord says, "Let my people go."
I am the way and the truth and the life. No one comes to the Father except through me.
This is the Talkin' Bible podcast.
Hey everyone, welcome back to Talkin' Bible with Rohan Bell and guest today, Jeannie Schwarz. Hello, Jeannie.
Hello, nice to be here again.
Good to have you. We are talking Bible and we're talking about Jesus predicting his death to his disciples.
Wow, that's very lovely.
Lovely. The
What a great topic.
disciples did not think it was lovely. They were fearful and shocked and grieved, all of those emotions.
Well, as you would be if somebody says, "Hey, I'm going to die," and die in a vicious way.
Yeah, and this is the second time recorded where Jesus predicts his death. So he did it in Caesarea Philippi when he went all the way up to the gates of hell and he predicted his death and said, "Hey, we're at the far end of the country. We're heading to Jerusalem and I'm going to be mocked, flogged and killed there. And on the third day I'll rise." And Peter says, "Never, Lord, this won't happen to you." And then Jesus rebukes him and says, "Get behind me, Satan." And then a few days later, 6 days later, some of the Gospels say he was transfigured before them on another mountain where Peter, James and John saw his glory. And then sometime after that, he predicts his death again to his disciples and they are fearful and afraid about it.
Two questions. What is his glory?
Sure.
Just start with that one.
Start
What
with
is
that.
his glory?
His transfiguration is a moment on this mountain where he's in prayer and Peter, James and John are there and somehow the shroud of his humanness is pulled back and they see the glory of God that is concealed inside his flesh. And they see the divine glory of God upon him. They see him who he really is when most of the time that is concealed. And only Peter, James and John experienced that prior to his resurrection.
And do they tell everybody about it right then?
No, I don't know that it records that they do. He came down off the mountain and they're asking him questions, but I don't remember them telling him. If they did, I remember hearing years ago a preacher saying, you could imagine how much of a pain they would be to the other disciples. It's always Pete, Jim, and John. They get all the fun. Pete, Jim, and John. How come we never get to see him transfigured? So I think the impression is that they keep it to themselves. Peter will refer to it. It's a life-changing encounter for him. So this isn't what we're talking about today.
No,
by the
it's
way.
not.
But Peter will
You are
refer
going
to
on
it
and on
many,
and on.
Yeah, I am. Peter will refer to it many years later when he says, we beheld him on the sacred mountain. So Jesus, in that moment, Jesus' glory is revealed to them. They see who he is, and then he goes back into his shell, if you like, back into his humanness, and predicts these passages we're reading, predicts his death this second time to his disciples.
So they've seen him as this glorious figure, heavenly figure, and now he's predicting his death?
Yeah.
That would be hard to hear for James. No, what did you call him? Pete, Jim, and John.
Pete, Jim, and John. Yeah, I think it would be hard for all of them to hear. And so I think this is after he's come down and all his disciples are there, not just Peter, James, and John. But it would be hard for them to hear. And I often think about this. That one, they heard him predict his death at Caesarea Philippi once already. They saw the rebuke of Peter, so I imagine they're a little bit hesitant to go up against Jesus and rebuke him. But they're struggling with this because they still can't get their mind, it seems, beyond the political Messiah.
So why is he predicting his death? Is he captured at this point? Are people like actively chasing him?
Not at all.
So there's reason why they wouldn't believe. It's not like there's an army coming after them or he's not in prison or anything.
No, he's just
casually
the beginning
walking
of the
along.
antagonism he's facing. Yes. He's just, in his mind, he knows what he's here for. He knows that he's come to earth to, ultimately to die. And I think that Luke's gospel kind of says he set his face as flint toward Jerusalem, this old school way of saying he resolutely set out. He determined he was going in a certain direction and he was not going to let anything get in the way of that. And this is part of that. He knows his purpose is to come and die. And so he's just going to tell them that's where he headed.
So why is he telling them?
So I suspect so that later on they would remember.
They would remember?
Because I think one of the Gospels will say it's hidden. What he was saying was hidden from them.
But it's pretty clear that he says here in Mark, the Son of Man is going to be betrayed into the hands of men. They will kill him, and after he is killed, he will rise 3 days later. But that doesn't really sound hidden. Though it does say, but they did not understand.
Did not understand him.
But it's not hidden.
Am I right in saying one of the other versions says that the meaning was hidden from them?
No, that's the one. Oh, no. They did not understand this statement. It was concealed from them in Luke.
In Luke's version.
So they could not grasp it, and they were afraid to ask him about it. There's quite a few differences, actually, between each verse, the way it's all written. Should I just read it for you?
Maybe get some context to we like the different nuances in each gospel. We just started talking about transfigurations and not about this passage we're supposed to be talking about.
Focus, people. Okay, here it is, Matthew 17, 22 to 23. As they were gathering together in Galilee, Jesus told them, the Son of Man, who was that? But anyway, the Son of Man is about to be betrayed into the hands of men. They will kill him, and on the third day he will be raised up. And they were deeply distressed.
Okay, so there's distress there.
Yep. Mark says, then they left that place and made their way through Galilee. But he did not want anyone to know it, for he was teaching his disciples and telling them, the Son of Man is going to be betrayed, which I said before, into the hands of men. They will kill him, and after he is killed, he will rise 3 days later.
So that's the same?
Yep, but they did not understand this statement, and they were afraid to ask.
So Mark explains that they didn't understand it. Matthew didn't say that. But
correct.
There's a fear of asking him what he means, okay?
Yep. They all add in a little bit, don't they?
Yeah.
And in Luke...
Their response is slightly different.
Yes.
Or a different nuance on their response.
Yes, correct. And Luke says, and they were all astonished at the greatness of God, because just before this he had driven a demon out of a boy. Okay. And the disciples could not. That was the one with the prayer and fasting.
Prayer and fasting one, yep.
You can only do these things through prayer and fasting.
Yep.
All right. So they were astonished at the greatness of God. While everyone was amazed at all the things he was doing, he told his disciples, let these words sink in. The Son of Man is about to be betrayed into the hands of men. But they did not understand this statement. It was concealed from them so that they could not grasp it, and they were afraid to ask him about it.
Okay. So there's in one sense they're fearful. Another gospel says they didn't understand it. And another gospel says they didn't understand and it was concealed. So all slightly different variations on their response.
Yeah. And straight after that in Luke is the conversation between the disciples about who's the greatest.
Yes.
So it seems that they did not understand.
They still didn't figure it out
at all.
Even though he's told them he's going to die, they're still arguing about, hey, in the kingdom of God, when we get to Jerusalem and you're the king, which one's going to sit on the right or left?
Yeah.
They clearly did not get what he was saying. And Luke makes that point that it was concealed or it was hidden from them. Whether or not that was hidden by the enemy or whether that was hidden by God himself in his divine wisdom, I guess I would tend to lean towards the latter.
Well, it would be hard to believe because up until this point, you believe the Messiah is going to lead a revolution and you're going to conquer Rome.
Yep.
So to hear that they're going to be Jesus is going to be handed over, betrayed by someone in their midst. Well, who could he be betrayed by? Only someone that he's close to.
Correct. You don't get betrayed by an enemy, you get betrayed by a friend.
And they will kill him, so there's people that want to kill him. That would be hard for them to understand because they would think, shouldn't all Israel get behind this guy because he is the Messiah? So why would they want to kill them?
Yeah.
And then this really weird statement, he will be raised again on the third day.
So we have the benefit of knowing how the story ends. They didn't have that.
No.
So their whole worldview is affected and influenced by their view of what a Messiah is supposed to do. And the whole concept of a Messiah dying, let alone rising again, was outside of their perspective at all. So, yeah, I think I can understand how they could respond with fear or confusion or misunderstanding of the whole thing, definitely.
Yeah, and throughout Christian history, people have remarked on that confusion.
Okay, tell me, give some examples. What have you found?
Have you ever heard of a guy called Chrysostom?
Yep, one of the early church fathers.
Yeah, he was born in 347.
Yeah, not long after the Christianization of the Roman Empire.
Yeah, he was an early church father, biblical interpreter, and he was an Archbishop of Constantinople.
He was.
And listen to what he says about them. He says, "It is remarkable that after all they saw, even after all that they did not fathom what was happening." Even after all that, they did not fathom what was happening. Sorry, I didn't read that very well. Rather, they were troubled, and not merely troubled, but exceedingly mournful. Now, this arose from their being ignorant as yet of the force of his sayings.
Well, that's a pretty good analogy. He's given them a bad rap, assuming that he'd be that much better. I think it's worth recognising that we all probably would fall into that trap.
Yeah.
And what's more, I think we often do. we have the benefit on this story of knowing the end of the story. So when Jesus says, hey, the way up is the way down, I'm going to show you that I'm going to suffer. But when Jesus says that to us, we go, no, Jesus, we just want the victory. We just want to sit on your left and right.
Yeah, we do.
We just want the easy way to the top. And Jesus often will call us to take the suffering, the painful, the road through death. But we don't want to hear that, or
No.
we're not convinced of that. We get blinded to that, but it still works that way. The way up is still the way down.
The way up is the way down. All right, I'm going to think about that one more often. I don't know why. But he also agreed with what we were just saying, that they were still holding on to their preconceived ideas about the Messiah and what the Messiah and his kingdom should look like. But isn't it interesting? We read these passages, and who do you think of first? Well, to me, it's the disciples and how they just miss the point.
Yes,
they
yes,
miss
they
everything.
miss
And I
everything.
read they're deeply distressed. They did not understand the statement. It was concealed from them. So you read it and you automatically think of the humans in the story. I don't automatically at all think of Jesus
I see.
predicting his own death.
You think about their response more so than Jesus' prediction.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And because we're looking for Jesus. So
Yes,
who is
okay.
Jesus in
Yeah.
this moment?
Okay, that's a great way to put it. So let's see what it reveals about Jesus if we think this through. So Jesus is making a statement about his ultimate direction, that he's telling them what he's come for. So it tells me that Jesus is resolute in his purpose, that he knows that his ultimate goal and ultimate requirement is that he will go to that cross and he will die for us. And so that once again points back to his immeasurable love. Even the fact that he was forewarning them. I wonder if that, your question then was, they didn't get it right. So maybe he shouldn't have told them. Why did he tell them? I think he said something like that earlier on. Why did he tell them? I'm wondering now if why he told them is not just for the future, but actually so that they could realize that he loved them enough to tell them about what was going to happen to him. So in the hope that maybe it wouldn't be such a shock to them.
He was preparing
He was
them.
preparing them. Yeah.
Preparing them. And he's also, and we talked about this another day, he tells you the bad news, but then he also says
The good
something
news.
good is going to
Yeah, that's
happen.
right. And 3 days later, I'm going to rise again.
Yeah.
Yeah. But they couldn't get past the death before they could even see the resurrection.
So he's faithful in telling them the story. He is not going to abandon them.
Yeah, great point.
Yeah.
Yeah, and, John, we're not talking about John's narrative here, but John's narrative in the Last Supper, the extended last narrative, he goes into great depth about this whole question of going away and coming back and I'm going to die and all that. And they're still trying to figure that out even then. A few hours before his death, they're trying to figure it out because they can't see how a Messiah could die.
No, they can't because they still have this preconceived idea of what needs to happen for their problems to be answered.
And so to apply it, though, I think it's really important that we just don't just get heavy on the disciples because, they didn't know. Because I still think this principle of blindness and having our blinkers on to see only things through a certain perspective or a certain worldview, we're just as prevalent to that today. So it's more like how can we learn from this? I know our question is how can we see Jesus in this, but at the same time I think how can we learn from the disciples so that we don't turn our back on Jesus when he got some hard things to say about the way things are working in our lives as well.
That's true. That's another conversation.
Yeah, but it shows me that Jesus loves us enough to tell us.
Yeah.
He loved them enough to tell them. He didn't need to. I mean, ultimately they were going to turn their back on him, desert him,
Yeah, they do.
but he still loved them.
And correct me if I'm wrong, has his public ministry ended at this point?
No, we're very relatively early on probably.
Really?
Well, Luke's version is where this is happening. It's not long.
Oh, sorry. In Mark's it is, though. The way Mark is written. His
Mark's
public
written it.
ministry in Galilee was over.
Okay.
But he continued to minister privately to his disciples as
Gotcha.
they journeyed to Jerusalem.
Yeah. So, yes, this is likely, and Luke's gospel picks up the same thing. It's just that it's very early on. So Luke's, I think, what verse are we in for Luke? Is it, what chapter are we in? About
9, 43 to 45.
Well, Luke's got 24 chapters.
Yeah, he sure does.
So, but the thing is, we always joked years ago that Jesus was born and then set out for Jerusalem to die, because Luke's gospel sort of has more than half the gospel dealing with this point of this latter part of his time. So, Luke 9, there's a lot still to happen, but there is this turning point when he gets to Caesarea. He says, from that moment on, he set his face to Jerusalem, and so all the way through, he leaves Galilee and he's making his way to Jerusalem. And the picture Luke wants you to get, and obviously Mark too, is that Jesus is on a mission to die.
But isn't that the biggest point?
That is.
So, for example, if I'm with a person who is this great leader and I think they're going to do this one thing and I'm excited about that one thing, and then suddenly it shifts and I'd be so shocked by that shift, then wouldn't I spend most of my letter writing to someone about this, explaining to them why the shift was.
Why did it not turn out the way you expected?
Yes.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
Yep.
Correct. Yeah.
That's exactly what I think they're focusing on. This ultimate mission is not what they thought the mission was going to be.
Because it's a shift in character as well. If they're
for their perception of Jesus.
Yes. So what do you imagine the Messiah would look like, this military Messiah? What would his characteristics be like?
You'd expect that a military Messiah is someone like Alexander the Great, who really was in some ways a military Messiah, whether you say he liberated or enslaved the world, but he brought his kingdom values to basically from England to India in the space of a few 10 or 12 years. I mean, that's someone who is just incredibly charismatic, incredibly powerful in their ability to do that. That's kind of what they're expecting.
So driven. He sounds very driven, Alexander the Great. I mean, he's called great.
He's called great for a reason. Yeah, exactly. So they're thinking like that. They're thinking about Julius Caesar, who just 50 years before this has, risen to power in Rome and conquered the known world, expanded the Roman Empire. That's what they're expecting. They're expecting someone in that vein.
So you're expecting someone to have political abilities.
Yep, political abilities, strong armies behind them.
Strong armies,
very
strength
charismatic,
of character.
Yep.
Perhaps full of valor.
Yep. And probably a healthy degree of arrogance as well.
Yeah, arrogance, possibly conceit.
Yep, shouldn't say healthy degree.
Yeah.
An unhealthy degree of arrogance.
I'm glad you rephrased that because that just actually went over. Yeah. But he would have been a character who didn't mind killing people in front of the way, who got in the way.
No.
I see him as like Arnold Schwarzenegger in a way. Like that guy has so much confidence and he's been a great leader in films and things and people love Arnie. Confidence, good at telling stories, great at lying, which we all know to be true about Arnie.
Exactly, yeah. You doesn't become governor of California without lying occasionally.
Yeah, and so you fill in the blanks here. What you think would be a great leader that is going to conquer Rome. Would you at any point ever think that this man would have humility?
No, not at all. No. The way up is the way down, Jeannie.
The way up is the way down.
Yep.
So here's your Jesus Messiah saying, I am going to be betrayed. I'm going to be handed over by the people who want to kill me, not I'm going to beat those people. Yep. I'm going to be killed by them. It would be very hard to see your leader as being humble enough to admit that he is going to be betrayed by a person close to him.
Yep.
Humble enough to allow himself to be killed by people who are coming after him, because a true noble good leader would kill all those people.
Totally.
But he was walking to his death.
He was actually going the other way.
Yeah.
And that is the kingdom way. So Jesus is modeling that to them and ultimately will model it through his washing his disciples' feet, teaching them about service, and then ultimately dying for them. He models that. And that is the model that we are supposed to follow. We're not supposed to rule and reign through power. We're supposed to rule and reign through giving up power and dying. There's a story in the book of Acts where the Apostle Paul is in Damascus after he's been saved, and the Jews want to kill him. He goes there to kill the Jews, or imprison the Jews. Imprison the Christians. He gets saved, and then the Jews want to kill him, and he escapes over the wall of the city because the governor wants to kill him. He escapes over the wall and gets away. And in one of his letters, he refers to this same principle. He's very much doing what Jesus is doing. He's saying, hey, when it came to it, he said, I was first over the wall to run away. And that whole analogy doesn't mean much to us, but to them it actually meant a lot, because what would normally happen in battle is the first over the wall would be the first into the city, who's conquering the city. The first up the wall and over the wall had a prestige and a power about them. That's what the world championed. And Paul's going, hey, I got nothing. I was prepared to run away. I had nothing of any value. The way to build God's kingdom is not through conquering. It's through surviving. It's through giving up myself. And he's prepared to get away in that way. So it's this humility attitude that he's mimicking of what Jesus is saying here, which is if you want to be great in God's kingdom, give stuff up.
And that's why I think it would be very hard for them to comprehend. And that's why it was concealed for them, because they were not ready to accept that humility is such a part of their Messiah.
Mm-hmm. Humility was very much seen as weakness in that era.
Absolutely, weakness.
And we champion humility to a degree today. We're not fully there, but any sense of which our society honors humility is because it's been built on a Christian ethic. But in those days, humility was weakness. The thing that made you great was the opposite of humility. It was pride. It was pomp.
Yeah, and it's still not great to
and it's
have
still
humility.
Not great.
Yeah,
no, it's still not great. I mean, we're not where they were in the first century, but because people, deep down inside, people kind of get, okay, well, there's something noble about humility. Even if I don't have it, they kind of don't, especially us Aussies, we don't necessarily like the pride and the arrogance. We tend to knock down the tall poppies. But in that culture, you champion humility. You champion victory and you shun humility. Yeah. And Jesus is showing that's a different way to live than that.
It would be very hard for them to accept that.
Mm-hmm.
So I give grace to those disciples because we know when I think about it like that they're seeing or they're hearing from their leader that, hey, the guy who you thought I was or what I was intending to do or what you think I was intending to do I'm actually not that guy.
No, Jesus' death was always the plan.
Yeah, it would have been quite shocking. No wonder why they didn't want to know.
Exactly. Yeah, we wanted to hide from it.
And instead go and discuss, well, who's going to be the greatest among us?
Yep.
In denial.
Yeah. Let's just ignore what Jesus just said because he's not sure of himself, but we're going to Jerusalem and we're going to get the victory. So there is a spiritual application for us in this. Let's make sure we don't live with our denial and our blinders on to the true way to experience the glory of God's kingdom is through death, through sacrifice.
That's just so hard to understand still for me.
Mm.
Who is this man, Jesus?
Yep.
I don't know.
It's one who's prepared to love enough to give up his life.
And so we should be shocked by the humility in that and also shocked as well by him preparing their hearts because he's not telling them for his purposes. And in fact, every time he tells them, he gives them a little bit more detail. So you hear it once, I don't want to hear it. The second time, there's a bit more detail and you come maybe getting used to the idea. And he's doing that for them, preparing them.
It is, and because it's not until afterwards that they understand it and they go, oh, we remember. Like the two guys on the road to Emmaus. Oh, we remember while he was still with us, he said he was going to do this. But it took them to actually experience it, to have their worldview changed enough.
I just want to read one little quote from a guy called Jerome.
Oh, you were into the Church Fathers today, Jeannie.
Yeah, I am in the Church Fathers.
Yep.
Because my CSB Bible has all the Church Fathers.
Gotcha.
Because I'm reading from the CSB. And who's Jerome?
One of the Church Fathers. No, I don't know. I lose track of. What year is he? Does it say?
He died in 419.
419. So
420.
he's 100 years after Constantine. Okay, so some 50-odd years after Chrysostom. Yep.
He was a biblical translator and monastic leader. Mm-hmm. He was regarded as the most learned of the Latin fathers.
Yes, I think he was part. It might have been involved in the Latin Vulgate, the Latin translation.
Was. Yeah, he was known particularly for his Latin translation of the Bible.
Yep,
the Vulgate.
There you go.
Yeah.
Okay.
And he said this, and I love that there's people before me, like seriously many years before me, who have been on this journey looking for Jesus and discovering things. And it's worth going back and reading what these Church Foundation people think.
Oh, yes, absolutely.
And he said, whenever the Lord speaks of future disaster, because he's predicting I'm going to die, he always teaches its close relation with the happiness of redemption. In 3 days I will rise.
In 3 days I will rise. So he's linking it in with the good news.
So that when disasters suddenly come, they do not terrify, but may be borne by hearts that have premeditated them. So
that's God's intention, always to sweeten the hard stuff with the hope.
Yes.
You know, one of our core values here at Anchor Point is hopefulness. And the whole eschaton, last year we talked about the book of Revelation being the hope of the eschaton, that, hey, no matter how hard things are now, hang on because we have the hope of the future. We have this hope as an anchor. to hold on to the glorious hope of the 3 days later he will rise again. Or as people say, it may feel like Friday, but Sunday's coming.
Yeah. And I like to think of it as like a parent saying to their kids, hey, I'm going away for a while, but I'll be back.
I'll be back, yeah.
Arnie said, I'll be back.
I'll be back.
Yeah, he did. So who is Jesus in this again?
So let's go with Jesus is so resolute in his love that he cares about us enough to not just sugarcoat things, but tell us how things are, but give us hope in the middle of that. And ultimately fully aware that sometimes we won't get it, and yet he still works with us. He didn't just go, right, you're done, you don't get it, I'll go find someone else. He knew they didn't get it, and he still worked with them. And in the end, he was prepared to go to the cross on his own with no one else, his disciples leaving him because of his love for us, and rise again so that he could then breathe his kingdom bring his spirit into their lives so that they could go and testify for him. So his love is extravagant in this.
And I would add that there is his humility and that he loves his disciples so much that he's not thinking about his painful death. He's actually thinking of them in the moment, and he's preparing their hearts so that it will not be as terrible as it is on the day.
Amen.
That's what I have learned from this chapter.
Very good. From these couple of verses.
These chapters, yeah.
Yeah,
verses. What am I saying?
Just verses.
Feels like chapters.
Just a few verses it is. All right, that's enough for today's episode then.
Yep, let's move on.
Thanks. We'll talk to you on the next episode.